guys, it's your girl Matt Cox with MA Couture Crafting. Thank you so much for tuning into this video. If you're new here, hey, and if you are my people and you've been around for a while, I missed you guys. It's been like a month since I posted a video and I'm not loving that. I think I'm going to start stacking my videos weekly as opposed to dropping 15 videos in a day, which is just not smart. So we've learned that lesson. Today we are going to look at Quilts Without Corners by Cheryl Phillips. I am obsessed with Cheryl Phillips' work. When I see it, it's unique, it's different, it's not the same old, and I see ways to put my spin on some of her things. The Butterfly Reborn, when I saw this, I was like, I have to. I was like, I just knew that I wanted to do it, but I was intimidated because it looks like an intimidating pattern. Can a beginner do this? Absolutely. You can absolutely do this once you see how it's done. Really, at the end of the day, you cut up some strips, sew them together, and then subcut them. Once you watch this video, you will absolutely, as a beginner, be able to do this quilt. The pattern had one issue that I caught that has to do with making the butterfly body, but we worked through it, we figured it out, and it came out beautifully. My butterfly came out really, really good, except for the fact that I switched a couple of the panels, but I wasn't seam ripping it. It would have been 3 seams to rip, and I was like, nope, it's staying in there. So my butterfly looks a little different than this one. If I did it again, I would definitely be sure, now that I know exactly what I'm looking for, to make the butterfly look like this, but whatever. There are some other patterns on here that are really kind of cool that I want to try, because I really, really like things that are different, that are funky. As I go through the, here are some butterfly variations. As I continue on my quilting journey, I will definitely be revisiting this. One of the things that I did was I made this quilt larger. So hers finishes at 50 inches. I think I made mine about 70, 75. I always want to make stuff bigger. What do you do with a round quilt? You can put it at the end of your bed. You can throw it over a chair. You can put it on your couch. It's a cuddle, it's a throw. So don't be intimidated. Do these. Do something different. You know, I get tired of seeing the same old, and people doing the same old. And you really get a chance to play with some funky colors. For this, I challenged myself to use nothing but prints, no solids. I mean, of course, I use some prints that read as solids just to give your eye a place to rest, but I just wanted to take it there. And so I used a ton of Kaffe and Free Spirit fabrics, and you guys will see exactly how this all comes together. And of course, it has a matching bag to go with it. You guys, thanks so much for stopping by. Please leave me comments. I love, love, love interacting with everybody. Let me know that you were here. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe. And I will see you guys on the next video. Okay, thanks. Bye-bye. All right, let's get into this big, beautiful circular throw. So this came from Quilts Without Corners, and I challenged myself to pull fabrics with patterns. I wasn't allowed to use any solids. Now, of course, some of my patterns read as a little more solid, but you know, you get the point. Now, I realized that I wanted to make this quilt larger than the original pattern. So you can see when you look at that butterfly that the fabric goes all the way to the corner. Mine has a lot more room. I think mine finished at like 70. It did. It finished at 70 by 70. So in order to do that, I'm adding extra fabric onto one of the sides of the panels. Now, I calculated this incorrectly, and right there, I think I'm using, maybe I added maybe 15 inches. I probably should have added about 30 inches to that first panel. I did not do enough, and it caused issues, but I made it through. Also, enlarging this pattern, because I'm using the whole ruler, I'll show you when we get there. So anyway, you cut strips. So we're going to start off with cutting strips. Lots and lots of strips. Some strips are thicker, some strips are thinner. A lot of this fabric is Kaffe facet. You guys know that I love me some Free Spirit. Free Spirit just rocks my whole world. Look at that. I mean, where else can you find super saturated colors like that? Only thing wrong with Free Spirit is they don't have any black designers. Other than that, I've got nothing to say. So again, thick strips, thin strips, according to the pattern. I didn't change any of that. you know, when you look at these large scale prints, you're like, what am I going to do with that? And sometimes I feel like the only way to really do something with these is to cut a big old square and sew it in the center of your quilt and let it do what it does. But you really get some interesting movement when you cut these up, and you get some interesting things that happen. Um, I I just look at it and I want to keep it just like that, or I want to see a large portion of it. But in this, you'll see that I cut this green panel up and it totally makes me feel like Golden Girls. I don't know why. Maybe it's the color story. But when I cut it up, it's kind of cool how it comes out. I like it. So I sewed all those together according to the directions. And now I folded it in half, and now I'm cutting strips. Now, like I was telling you guys, the pattern calls for you to cut these strips a certain width, and you really need to stick to that based on how much fabric you have. But I should have cut mine just a little bit larger, because as you see, as I lay this ruler out, I'm close. Like, and there's some points where at the very, very tip, there's not enough fabric to cover that. So it gets a little tricky. So enlarge that a little bit, or just make multiple panels, and then you don't have to worry about it. Then you can make it as big as you need to. So, like I told you guys, see that right there? It wasn't long enough. So now I have to add fabric to the top. And I had already cut these. I get smart enough to add that fabric to the whole panel at some point in just one long strip, but I had to cut a bunch of little strips to add to the top of that. I mean, I struggled through this. It was worth it, but I struggled. And the pattern asks for you to offset these strips. So you cut a bunch of strips and you offset them, and then you place this ruler on your fabric, and then you cut. And you see how you need to have fabric up there closest to my body to the left. You have to have enough fabric up there, and I didn't at one point, so I had to add that fabric. But other than that, this is not difficult to do. It's just, do you want to buy enough fabric to make 2 or 3 of all those panels? And do you want to do the 3 panels? And you know, it's just kind of Other than that, just follow the pattern and you'll get a smaller butterfly. And it'll come out just fine. Because again, this isn't really difficult to do. It's actually quite forgiving, believe it or not. So here I am adding, see, I got smart enough to just add that whole strip to the top of that panel and then cut it. And now it's long enough. Now I don't have to be trying to cheat it. The width, well, I still struggled because I only cut what the pattern specified for. I did not make extra panels. So I was sweating bullets. And I cheated some of these seams, if I'm being 100% honest. All of them were not 1/4 inch seams. Some of them were 1/8. But it worked out just fine. And you're going to place one of these numbers, whichever one they tell you, on whatever line they tell you. And that's how you kind of figure it out. So remember, it has to be long enough to shift down and shift up. And each one will be a little bit different. And that's how you get it. Get that butterfly look. So here, make sure that you want to label, label, label. If you look at the end design, I put 2 panels in incorrectly. And it doesn't bother me, but yeah, had I labeled them and paid attention a little bit closer, we wouldn't have had that issue. And once I realized it, I would have had to rip 3 seams, and I was like, nope, it's staying. This is what it looks like when you sew those 2 wedges together. For a minute, all I was doing was making Dresden type quilts and things. And so this just fits right into that, because at the end of the day, this is really just a huge Dresden. Huge triangular shape. That's all this really is. And then you just sew them together. And you see I have my guard there, and it sews together really easily. You think that this would be a lot more complicated than it really is, but it's really not that bad. So far, the directions are good. I figured out to add the fabric. This is where the directions get a little tricky. Here they tell you to cut the fabric in half. Don't do that. Don't do that. It tells you cut it in half. So I cut it in half. Do not cut it in half. I think they made a boo-boo right here. And I know that they have some inserts that tell you where things have gone awry. And I don't know if anybody has caught this one. So when you fold it in half and you grab the, when you fold it in half and you grab that template, you'll see that the template is not, it doesn't fit. So I am just kind of straightening this up and trying to get as straight as possible. And then I folded it in half here. And I pinned it, and I'm all gung-ho. I'm ready. I'm like, okay, I'm getting ready to cut out. This is for the butterfly body. So it tells you which strips to sew together. You have a pretty little, strip set. And see, look, I'm like, wait, when you fold this in half, it doesn't fit. So I'm looking at the picture, and at the bottom, it fits. Right here, I'm like, nah, something's wrong. So what I did was I sewed the leftover pieces together in the same order, and then I laid them one on top of the other. I didn't sew them together. I just laid them. I matched them up, and I pinned it. Match these puppies up and pin them. And I did that on both sides. And I mean, I really took the time to match these up. Now I can see a tiny bit of bowing here, but for whatever reason, it all worked out, because this was scary, because the object of the game is to get identical sides on the right and the left. And if I was a little off, it wasn't going to be great. So instead of using freezer paper, I just used the actual pattern. I'm pinning it, and then I sewed a 1/4 inch to the right of that fold line. So you'll see to the right, and now I open it up. Bam, got it. Got what I needed. That's the shape that I was looking for, and it matches up pretty darn good. And so I'm making sure that there's enough to actually cut the pattern from, and there is on the both of the sides. And I was like, perfect, because this is going to be the body of the butterfly. And now I'm going to just cut a 1/4 of the inch away from that sewn line, now that I've checked it and realized that I don't have to resew it. First try, made me very, very happy. So this is when I do need to grab some freezer paper, and I just press that seam open. And in order, before I actually cut that, I will use freezer paper. So now I'm going to work on that center hole that happens when you do a bunch of Dresdens. When you sew a bunch of those pie shapes together, you will get a hole of some sort that you probably need to deal with. Some people applique. I've got a girlfriend who said that she can actually inset a circle, which I wish I could do, because I really don't love appliquing. I'd rather inset it, but I'm not that cool yet. 2 ways to do it. You can do it all in one color, or you can add that stripe, which is what I've chosen to do, so that it kind of blends in. No, it really should blend in almost perfectly with your butterfly center. You'll see it in just a moment after I finish cutting this out. I wish, oh, actually, I was about to say, I wish that they had an acrylic template for this. They do. I purchased it. I just purchased it late. So now I don't have to worry about trying to cut with paper. I mean, my little fingers, I'm just scared I'm gonna lose a finger one day, because rotary cutter plus paper template equals scary. I'm going extremely slow, guys, right there. Remember, this is sped up like 4 times faster. And you see how slow it looks like I'm going, because that's how slow I go. So now you put all your little wedges together according to what the pattern tells you to do. Otherwise, you'll probably do it incorrectly, which I almost did, because, And then you sew your 2 sides together. Don't sew them together. And mine came out a little wonky because, I sew a little funky. I do. I do not sew perfect 1/4 inch seams yet. I don't know that I ever will. So my stuff often comes out a little wonky. Do not let that discourage you from trying a project, which is why I'm taking you along this journey. So you can see that flubs usually turn out okay for me. Freezer paper. I am folding it in half, and I am taking that template, and I'm putting the fold where it says fold, and that way I'll get a full butterfly body. I never understood the purpose of freezer paper when you could just have the pattern, but for this, it totally makes sense, because I'm able to place that freezer paper directly on the fabric, iron it on, it sticks. That's the cool thing about freezer paper, is it'll stick to your fabric without leaving a residue. But I can place that thing exactly where I want it and see. I'm not flying blind. Like, I'm not working from the back. I can work directly from the front and see exactly where I will be cutting. And so I'm like, oh, freezer paper, it's starting to make sense. There's some uses to it. I have it because everybody said to have some, but I haven't always understood why the heck I had it. But for this, look, I can see exactly where this is going to go. Really pleased about that. I grabbed some more freezer paper, folded it in half, cut it in half, have no idea why I'm using this freezer. Oh yes, stabilizing the back. Stabilizing the back of that hole so that it's not moving all around. In theory, you're supposed to be able to use this template and make sure that your circles are the exact same. Wasn't able to do that. Don't know why. Couldn't make it work. I got that sucker to look as close like a half circle as I could and called it a day because I was taking way too much time trying to line that up. It just wasn't working for me. And now I'm stabilizing it with just a random sheet of freezer paper. The sticky side, the shiny side, is toward the fabric, so it's stuck to the wool just a little bit. I am using my circle templates just to clean up the curves. They weren't exactly perfect. They had little nubs here and there from my sewing because, again, I do not sew perfectly. And so I just grabbed this just to get the curve, keep the curve, and clean it up a bit. All right, here we go. The sticky part is facing up, so now I'm grabbing my half circle, and you see how that little strip allows it to blend in really well. I like that. Again, you can do all solid, whatever colors in the middle, but nah, I like it with the little thing. I wish I had moved it down just a little bit, or even turned the corner under. I really don't like raw edge applique, but I'm on this journey. We'll figure out what I learned to do with that, because it would have been better to inset that, in my opinion. And I probably could have, now that I'm looking at it. That probably could have worked out really well. Oh well, you live and you learn. If I had pinned that properly, I wonder if I could have gotten that inset versus appliqued. Eh. So now I am setting that down on top of that paper that's showing so that it sticks in place. And now I'm grabbing some invisible thread, and I'm going to go on ahead and do a blanket stitch all the way around my appliqued piece. Look at the blanket stitch go. And there it is. It's close. It's not perfect, but it's close. And now I'm going to just trim off that excess that was hanging off over there. And I did the same thing for the right side, and bam, look what happens when you put those puppies together. Oh, just brilliance. Oh, these colors. This quilt gives me such good energy. So now I'm going to trim off that little excess piece just to straighten it up. And now we can right sides together. Oh, apparently no, we cannot. We are going to get our butterfly body together. I wonder why I chose it to do it this way. Who knows what I was thinking? This happened a while ago. I did this probably a month ago. All right, and so now I am fusing that so that I can cut that out nicely. And we'll just cut all around that guy. Again, the seams are open. This is a facing piece, which is going to be the back of the butterfly top, to make sure that the top of the butterfly is not raw edge appliqued. It'll actually have a turned under piece, which I like a lot because, like I just said, I do not love raw edge applique. It kind of bugs me. So I'll just go around that piece. Make sure that you can't see through it. I did some tests with the fabric because you really should be using probably a solid, but this was the fabric that I have. You know, I'm all about using up your scraps. So we are going to just go ahead and use up those scraps and cut this out. But yeah, be sure that you cannot see through the fabric that you're using, because those are both prints and it could have gotten really funky, but I tested it to see if it would work out, and it worked out fine. So I chose to cut that out with my rotary cutter, and there we got the butterfly body and the facing strip. Right sides together, sew around the top of that 1/4 inch seam and flip it. Oh, I was like, why am I ironing that? Because I've already sewn it. Okay. And I'm just turning it out, making sure that all of those are just pushed out as far as I can and as smooth as I can get it. And then I set it with the iron. And now it has been faced. Now, I should have placed this butterfly down back where I had it. It should be placed down much further toward the bottom because I don't want you to be able to see that circular bottom. That was my goal. I didn't want you to be able to see the circle at the bottom. Unfortunately, I didn't get it at the widest part that I could have. See right here? I'm like, oh great, when that opens up, it'll just double and cover all that. It didn't. It did not work out. That's what I wanted. That's what I was going for. I failed. So pull it down just a touch more and you'll be fine. So I'm folding this in half. This is a really interesting way to put this on here. I never would have thought to do this. But you put it down where you want it. And then you pin it in place or clip it, however you want to do it. I have pins that are holding mine in place. And now I'm pinning it together. And I don't know, I guess, although it might not be a consistent 1/4 inch seam, I guess it is a consistent seam of sorts. Because when I tell you that the tips of these circles, like the halves, matched up perfectly, I was like, look at that. I was very pleased. Right here, I was like, oh, I didn't have to try to stretch it or anything. It just worked out. So I went ahead and went down the edge and clipped or pinned them. Did I use clips? I use clips. I use Wonder Clips for this. And I went down all the way to the bottom. And I was like, what? This top is about to be done. Clipping, clipping, clipping. And then I went ahead and sewed down that seam. And it totally worked out. I mean, when I say like totally worked out. Now, this is interesting. See the Mr. Butterfly? It can't go anywhere because it's caught in between. And I think that's pretty cool. But see, when I open it up, I'm like, darn, you can see a little bit of that circle. And I wish that I had just moved it down just a smidge. It would have been lovely. The things that bother me that nobody else cares about. My mother would be like, get over it. My mother is such a get over it person. Don't let stuff bother you. She does not have quirks like I do at all. So then you just flatten this guy out and hit it with that good iron, with that nice and hot iron, and that's your butterfly body. Isn't that cool? I think that's pretty cool. And the way that that color story works out, because they've told you which strip to place where in that panel for the butterfly body. Pretty darn awesome. I am doing some permanent fusible glue here. I love to use this permanent glue. And then if you hit it with an iron, it will help it dry even faster. But you can stitch that down. But I was taking this to be quilted, and I should have basted that down. I did not do it, but my quilter is just a beast. And so she's very, very thoughtful about everything that she does. And she knew to watch that butterfly body to make sure that it didn't get flipped over or anything. This is fusible bias tape. So it is just some black stuff with some sticky, it's stretchy black fabric with a sticky material on the back. And I'm just sliding these in and forming them. Now, when you do this, please be sure to take the release paper off the back before you try to iron it down. Because you know what? It won't stick. Huh? Release paper removed. And now we're better. Now it's making sense. So then you can go on ahead and hit that with your iron according to the instructions, and it will stick down. And then I moved it over to the side and just kind of formed it so that they were pretty as even as I can get them. Then I took this over to my sewing machine and decreased the stitch length on a zigzag stitch quite a bit. And I just zigzagged from one side to the other. This is not a satin stitch. I wasn't really worried about that. I just wanted to make sure that it stayed on the black. And I'm doing this with black thread. And I'm just letting that guy go with my open toe foot so that I can see what's happening and kind of control it. And that's how I stitch them down. And then with the top here, I hit it with some more fabric glue. And I blanket stitched across the top in addition to the fabric glue with more clear thread. And there we go. Now for the back, I did another looper. I know you guys are tired of me seeing me doing loopers, and I think I have another pattern that I'll be putting on the backs of my quilts. But these loopers are just cutie patooties. I wish that I had them in acrylic so that I could really just be cranking these out a little faster. But I did a looper on the back of the 4th of July quilt. You guys should check that out. Not 4th of July, the Lucky Clover quilt. St. Patrick's Day quilt. Then I did it on the back of this one, and then I have another video where I did it on the back. So I've done 3 loopers at this point. 2 of them are the same. One is on a square, this is on a circle, which gives it a whole different look, guys. And all you do is grab these semicircles and stack them up. For the most part, sew them together, grab some stripes. And the cool thing is just you can do so much with these if you twist and turn them. I don't love sewing curves. They kind of freak me out. And so I'm kind of, I very limited. I only want to sew 2 curved panels. And plus this is going on the back. So, you know, by this time I'm really ready to move. But see, you just sew some strips together. You sew these together and voila, you have a looper on the back. But if you want to sew like 4 sets of these curves, you can really do some neat patterns. And if you change the way that your strips are, you can have them going under and over. Just the coolest pattern ever, which is why everybody and their mother is doing loopers. There's a ton of looper quilts, including now 3 of mine, because what? I'm about that looper life. Sort of, says the person who will only sew 2 curved panels for any back of the quilt. Maybe the next one. Oh no, I said I wasn't doing these anymore. I'm telling a story because I just love them. So the trick for me to sew in these curves is pin like the Dickens. Pin, pin, pin. And there you go. Love these colors. I had so much fun picking out the colors for the back of this quilt, where I did end up using some solids. I can't help it. I'm a solids girl. The hardest one to sew is this little guy right here because it is the smallest, but it comes out. It has come out for me 3 times, and I am not the greatest sewer. We've already established that. So, and this is how it works. Right sides together. And then that's pretty much a looper. I forget who makes the looper pattern. I think it's Sarah. I forget, but it's called the looper. And then when I open it up, look, it's on the money. Check out that looper. What? Isn't it gorgeous? You guys, thank you so much if you have watched this entire video. I appreciate it. Let me know if you try this quilt. And if you haven't already done so, please like, comment, and subscribe. Check you later. Bye-bye.